Good evening and welcome to the regular council meeting for Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather and work is on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. Before we get started, we just have a couple agenda updates or amendments with unanimous approval from council. We have a 4-page letter from the Comox BIA that would be possibly going under correspondence with unanimous consent. And it is on the Comox Tourism Service Delivery and the creation of a Comox Tourism Advisory Committee in regards to the MRDT. So with that, is all in favor of adding the letter to correspondence with further discussion on this item April 1st? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. And we have one delegation this evening and looking to move that item from new business for 2181 Comox Avenue up in the agenda to just after the consent agenda with unanimous consent. So I'll move that that's moved past consent agenda. Moved, seconded. Any questions or comments or moving that forward in the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? And those two are passed. Thank you very much. So I'll just move for an adoption of the agenda for tonight as amended. Moved and seconded. And just a reminder to use your mics, please. Any questions or comments on the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes. Thank you. So our first delegation this evening is from the RPEG group for 2181 Comox Avenue. So I'll just invite Darren Alderman from the RPEG group. I believe we have Drew also. Welcome.
Hi.
And I'll just get you to turn the mic on with the red there.
How's that?
Perfect.
Perfect. All right. First things first, I'm not Darren Alderman.
No, I was going to say you're Drew.
Darren is here with me. I'm Drew Ratcliffe. I'm the president of the RPEG group. Darren and I have been dealing with a cold, so I drew the short straw, and I'm going to take this so that he doesn't have to get through this. But thank you for this. I understand I have 10 minutes.
Yeah, I was just going to say you have 10 minutes and then questions after.
With questions? Okay.
Not including questions.
What's that?
Not including questions. So you
Got
can
it.
take 10
All
minutes.
So I think we've already placed a small bet over here that I think most of us are probably here for this item. We understand that this height on any redevelopment is in any municipality something that people want to talk about and consider and have a thoughtful discussion about. So when we reflect down and back to the original OCP planning process, in the last meeting that you guys had about the request for us to go to 9 stories on this site, the takeaways for us. There we go. The takeaways for us from that meeting seem to be a couple of things, and I'm going to keep this really short in the interest of time. One was, who are we? And I think that's a really relevant question. So who we are is we've been owners and business partners in the community of Comox since 1984. So my grandfather bought this site out of foreclosure from the builders at the time, and we've operated this site since 1984. I've been up here since I was 10 years old. I love the Comox Valley. I don't live here, but having a significant presence as far as the business goes here for 40 plus years should hopefully demonstrate that we're here for the long term. This is our 70th year in business. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. And really, as a family business for us, meaning and making community matter for us is something that is woven through everything we do. So hopefully to the questions that had come up in the previous meeting about who we are, that answers some of the questions. We're throughout British Columbia, and in every single community that we're in, we operate all of our own sites. So we don't use third parties. We hire local people to run the site. At the Mariner, some of you probably know this, at the Mariner we have 2 generations of managers that have been running this building since 1982 for us. So what are we trying to do here with the project? And I think, again, some of the takeaways from that meeting that I heard was fairly lukewarm support for the height, given the nuances of this site, which is unique to Comox, given the topography. The fact of the matter is, we're trying to find a creative solution to what is a housing issue. So the Mariner Apartments right now for us, average tenancy is 14 years. Average rent is 30% below market rent and has been since we've owned the building. So at the meeting last time, I heard conversations around tenant displacement and the process for dealing with that. Tenant displacement is not as simple as cutting a check and recuperating or covering rent. It's about finding housing stock, which you guys are well aware because you've been through this process. Like every other municipality, housing stock is hard to find. So what we're here to do today is I try to appeal to this notion that what we're proposing here is a creative solution, which means we do not have to displace Mariner tenants. So nobody gets displaced from the existing building if we get to build, as it's shown here on the yellow on the block. So I've covered some of these data, but I'm going to hold here because I want to make sure everyone's clear. What we're proposing to do is to take a 3-acre site and build on the bluff. And by going to 9 stories, and I think that's an important clarification, we've put in plans for 9 stories. I understand it's a city bylaw interpretation that because half of our parkade is considered a story in the town of Comox, hence it becomes 10 stories. But it's 9 stories that we're proposing. And by going up, it allows us to not encroach on the Mariner, which means we don't have to tear that building down. Okay, hold on. So this, I think, is a really important graphic for everyone to look at. I wish it was bigger, quite honestly, but 3 primary benefits of what we're trying to do. So the building here is the Seascapes, which is right up on Comox Ave. So that currently is a 4-story building, but the current OCP allows them to go to 6. So what you're showing here, what we're showing here is that from Comox Ave, that line there at the 4 is where a 9-story our project would land in terms of any concerns with respect to height. So if Seascapes becomes redevelopable to 6 stories, you can see that those extra 2 stories mean that based on the topography of this site, those 6 stories off Comox Avenue will completely bifurcate the view from any issues with respect to the property that we're proposing here. Okay, so we've heard a lot of feedback. We've had some great conversations with the town already. All of our sites are pet friendly. We fully support Pioneer Park becoming pet friendly as well. It would be part of the project that we're offering to the town, and we would accelerate, obviously, as part of the contribution, some of that park infrastructure that we've heard is a priority for the community. But really, again, for us, this is about, and I can't stress this enough, by going to 9 stories, we keep the Mariner as it currently is, and it would allow us to then refurbish the current Mariner. At 30% below market rent, there's a trade-off, and the trade-off is simple. It's either people have rent that they can afford, and with a 14-year tenancy, it's pretty hard to argue that we would be able to find somewhere else for someone to go that's been in the Mariner for 14 years. Regardless of the tenancy displacement and the act for BC that allows us to essentially compensate for lost rent and pay for rent. It's a housing stock issue. So if we don't do this, and I think this is important, if we don't go vertically with expansion, it means we have a larger footprint, because the Mariner at 42 years old, it doesn't have a lot of life left in it unless it gets substantial influx of capital, which doesn't happen based on 30% below market rents. So this is us coming to the town with what we think is a creative solution that I don't think you're going to find most people in any municipality that are prepared to do this kind of commitment, which I can tell you at this point isn't inconsequential. For us to try to work around an existing building requires a lot more of our time, a lot more of our consultants to try to make this work. And we're at a point now where we feel like we can make this work, but we can't proceed without certainty. It's as simple as that. Certainty means that at this point, just so we're clear, this amendment is just for the height. We're not at a point of approving what the site looks like or what the offering is. That's still coming in due course. But the first step is an important one because, again, it would dictate for us how we treat the existing Mariner stock. So, sum it up. Why 10 stories? Again, 10 stories is the city's interpretation of the bylaw. So it's a 9-story site. We can protect and rehabilitate the Mariners apartment. The project becomes feasible for us to do, which in this climate right now, I don't have to share this with anybody else that doesn't know this, but it's a pretty difficult environment right now, both from capital and tenancy. We can build better and we have intentional space planning that we think can benefit the town long term, because again, we're not going anywhere. We're 4th generation owners, and if I have anything to do with it, it'll be 6 or 7 after I leave. So I think that covers it. There you go. So, questions?
Thanks, Drew. That was very timely. You can
Good time.
still have a couple more minutes if you wish, but we'll look for questions from council on the proposal. Thank you. Questions from council? You guys all put your hands up at the same time. We'll go to Councillor Haslett and then Mayor and then down the table. Councillor Haslett.
Thanks. So just going back to the proposed project, and you've got the brown and the yellow on there. To confirm the brown, keep going. Yeah, there it is.
This one.
Yeah.
Yep.
How close to the top of the bank is that proposed project? Like, I know it gets quite steep right there.
Yeah, so there's still, if you've been in there, which apparently a lot of people do, because there's an informal trail that has been cut through by people walking through the site. There's still about a 20-foot clearance between the edge of this and the bluff. Mm-hmm. Now, I think Councillor has it. Probably the answer to these kinds of questions are left to geotech, which obviously we wouldn't be here today unless we had comfort that this can be done. All right.
And then and maybe this is just to have a little bit more of an idea on the scope of the project, but
yeah,
for that building there, what do you have to do to the bank to make sure that it's sustainable enough that you're not gonna?
That's where, again, relying on the geotech engineers.
Okay.
Right.
Like personally myself, like I understand exactly what you're going for, and I really applaud you on the creative approach to this to try and keep the displacement for the current residents of the Mariner building, and I really respect the less than or the 30% below market rate for all the tenants that you have in there. I do have a bit of a problem with the height as it stands right now.
Yeah.
Big part of that to me is the fact that we did just wrap our OCP up, and there was quite a bit to get to 6 stories. Yeah, so the height's a little bit of a problem for me, but I do really see where you're trying to go with this.
I think this is, again, every municipality that's looking ahead at housing stock and the provincial mandate for the next 5-10 years and how we're going to deliver these housing got to go up at some degree. And I think this site is just, again, we're not here because we're talking about a site on Comox Ave. We're here because we're talking about a site that I think is a little bit more nuanced and can accept this kind of height without being something that is, and we've done the shadow studies, which we can share later, that nobody's getting affected currently, right?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Mayor and then I believe Councillor Grant after that.
Hi. Thank you. I also appreciate your creativity, and similarly, I'm quite challenged by the 10 stories. But my question is, if this, you've kind of alluded to it, but you haven't explicitly said, if this project doesn't go ahead, what would be your plan for maintaining the Mariner?
Fair. I think 2 things, and this is in an abundance of just being fully transparent. We're operators of real estate. We're not developers, but at 40 years, this site and this building is due. So for us, the biggest struggle, and this started in 2019 when, if you recall, there was a city water main rupture that caused significant damage to the first floor of the building. Everyone at the time, including our insurers, said, tear it down. You can't salvage this. We didn't do that. In fact, we sunk a lot of money into it that wasn't covered by insurance in order so that we didn't have to evict the top 3 floors of this building. So this is a real struggle for us in that by most other metrics, somebody else on this site in our space isn't having this conversation. It's just not part of the economics or the practical planning to keep this site at 6 stories and 80 years going if we kept there, or the 4 stories of the Mariner. So the plan for us is this: like everybody, we need clarity, and we had hoped to get that through the OCP process, but that's why we're here now, where we do think that this is more of an informed conversation. The plan for us would be, if we decide to go back to the 6 stories right now, we can't. It doesn't economically. The project is not feasible keeping the Mariner, and that's a significant blow. So I think for us, it's 2 phases. It's either, we get clarity that we can proceed and start having more in-depth investment on what the 9-story project could look like, or the 6-story, quite honestly, it would be either, a potential 6-story development that takes the Mariner away, or an outright sale. And I can tell you, given the Seascapes that just sold, I mean, if you head up to that street, Seascape, they put $3 million into refurbishing that building and then sold it for a big number. Their rents are not 30% below market. And their balconies that are really clean, they look great, but that's because they have outside management that tells people how they should live their lives. That's not us. So it's a big struggle for us for sure. But again, we think the site lends itself to something like this. Yeah.
Councillor Grant.
I never had my light on, but I can come up with a question if you want. I guess I have the same concerns that everybody does. We just finished an OCP that was quite grueling. It took us a couple of years to get organized.
Yeah.
And we pushed the boundaries pretty good on that to get to where I think we had to be. But this is well larger than that. And so I do have a problem with the height for sure. But I'm wondering, on your plan there, you've got a rooftop amenity.
Yeah.
That appears to be taking up an entire floor. So what is that?
Typically for us, typically for us, again, and I won't go into the details too much, but we approach all of our sites like its own community. So again, because we own and operate these sites, for us, what the community offers to our tenants goes beyond those amenities, and it includes our people. But in this case, it would be a rooftop barbecue. Okay. It would be space for the tenants to enjoy living space. Again, and I want to be clear, this is not a final, the rooftop amenity has to go. That still would be something that town would have say in. I guess just to get to the height thing, I know this is going to keep coming up. We just feel that, again, based on where the OCP currently stands at 6, with the Seascapes at 6, we're already at the top of what is 9 stories on the bluff. So I get it on the surface. 9 sounds like a big number. 110 new units of housing, I think, is something that deserves and warrants the conversation, much less the fact that we're not displacing 74 units at the Mariner.
Got you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Blacklock.
Well, saying thank you for the presentation. It's an interesting project, interesting idea for a project. I would assume can you confirm for me, at this height of a building, you would have to go with a concrete frame building or a concrete and steel frame building?
I can confirm that we've looked at both. So recently, building code changed to allow tall timber to 12.
Okay, like mass timber.
Yeah. Which I think is really innovative for sure, but the costs are still not fully borne out,
right? Despite
our provincial government telling us that it is. So at this point, I think there's going to be a concrete podium plus at least 6 stories.
Yeah. Okay, and we've gotten a lot of feedback on this just in the last week.
Yeah.
One of the themes from most letters we've gotten from the neighborhood is around traffic.
Yeah.
So at 109 units for this building, how many parking stalls would be available in those 2 parking? Like, would we be looking at 1 per unit or 1.5?
That's the current request for the town, right? So that would be part of any further submission for us on the 1-to-1. Does 1-to-1 make sense? Keeping in mind, as you know, that none of this goes forward without a traffic assessment and a plan that puts something in place that says this can handle this. Now, we've had conversation with Providence Healthcare, our neighbors. I mean, given what they have in their community plan there's no question there is a traffic solution that needs to be found over the next 5 years. Yeah, I think the roundabouts that are up there right now seem to be making a big difference. But again, sure, there's a question to be had,
Okay.
or an answer to be had for sure.
And then you might not have gotten this far in the process, but are you thinking that these would be 109 units for rent or for condo strata title purchase?
Yeah, so we're, you know what, I say this, I think, with a lot of humility, but we've been in the rental game for 70 years.
Okay.
We build rental housing. We feel like we're one of the best ones out there. The condo game is a risk portfolio and quotient that we don't undertake. But you got to understand the rental, typical rental portfolio or pro forma takes 10 years for payback. And that's assuming all that risk on construction. That's why most people, you know, for the better part of 10 years, there was an awful lot of condo hype. We've never played that game. On this site here, it would be rentals. We have talked about and considered the idea of having a floor or two as an airspace that people could rent to own. I think there's some novel ways to approach that if families want to buy, but we're, to your point, we're a little bit early in that stage, other than I can tell you in 70 years, we've done one condo project. I don't foresee us doing any more in the future, certainly with this climate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for the presentation, Drew. I know for council, this is the first time that many councillors have seen kind of the different drawings and concept. Has there been any alternative kind of looks, knowing what the OCP was coming out as likely 6 stories in that area, with having like 2 newer buildings on the site, or is there any other alternatives besides kind of the 9-10 stories and the leaving of the Mariner building, with displacement being a big challenge?
No, I hear you. I mean, the modeling that we've done, and to be clear, we've been doing this, I feel like, since I met with Mayor Arnott in 2019, when everyone was saying we should tear the building down when the flood happened. The modeling doesn't, right now, it doesn't make the project feasible at 6 stories to keep the Mariner.
Right.
So I you know, I guess I can't make it any more simpler than that. Right now, 6 stories doesn't make sense unless the Mariner would come down, right? To produce those 200 units back on the site would take 6 stories with a much bigger footprint, less green space, and less preservation of some of that openness that we have right now. So.
And the current Mariner, you said, was 72 doors, 72 units?
74.
74 units.
74 units, 108 people.
Okay,
Yeah.
108. Thank you for that clarification. I think we have Councillor Swift and then Councillor Kerr. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation, and it's interesting to see the drawing. We've had a lot of letters come in, as you might imagine, and one of the concerns is the roadway, I guess, trying to evacuate the building and the roadway. And I'm wondering if there's any ability to have access on the Providence side.
Yes, Councillor Swift, hold on, let me get to this one here. This issue, access. Yeah, so so we've had those conversations with Providence. So a couple of things. One, and I think we're still working with the town to figure this out, but believe it or not, some of that bottom of Manor Drive, when this was done, still falls on our title. So there's some easement issues that haven't been addressed in 40+ years that we haven't resolved, that we've got to deal with. But we have had conversations with Providence about the adjacent property line down here, knowing what they have told us, what they want to put on their bluff and in the center of their property. Could we put access down? What they've told us thus far is that for construction purposes, we would probably be able to work access. So we could gain access to this site, you know, from that property line, which would save Manor Drive during construction. But beyond that, it would be far too early because they haven't finished their planning to know if it would be a permanent access.
And just follow up then, but it might be. It might be a permanent access depending on what Providence decides.
So I can tell you this, when we started the conversation, it made a lot of sense, and I think it still does. The question is just how do we facilitate that with them, given that they put a pause on all of their further projects under the current environment. It's just not feasible for them. So the idea for us to wait makes it a little bit more complicated. Yeah.
Councillor Kerr.
Great, thanks for the presentation, Drew. First of all, I just want to say a big thank you to your company for providing that affordable housing in our town. That's really important. Appreciate that. 30% below market value is significant, so thank you. Just following up on the mayor's question, so again, the pro forma, let's say you took down the Mariner and built 2 6-stories, that gives you 12 stories in total. Have you done that analysis? So, I mean, I think the feedback we've had about keeping, you know, the small town feel of Comox, the 10-story really is not, you know, that's a tough sell for our community. So
9.
but 9.5. 9.5 rounded up is 10. But yeah, so 9 plus parkade. I hear what you're saying. But would 6 plus 6 meet your financial pro forma needs while also
So it's
providing?
so sure. It's the easy answer is yeah, it's doable,
Mhm.
and I think it would be doable in the wider market if it was in somebody else's hands. But it's just to be clear, those 200 units aren't coming back as 110 market and 74 below market.
Mhm.
Those numbers do not pencil out. We can't. I mean, interest rates today. I mean, I think we're going back, quite honestly, on the interest rate side. So the pressures right now for us are displacing tenants and the cost base right now. So for us to do 6 stories, create those same 200 units, I don't see it. Again, our modeling right now has it such that even if interest rates stay where they are, for us to be able to do it doesn't mean affordable housing comes back.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Mayer.
Thank you.
Sure.
And sorry, were you imagining any affordable units in the new building?
Not right now.
Okay.
No. So the commitment at the Mariner is such that so CMHC is providing funding for those that are willing to lock in affordable housing rents. So we've done that. So we've secured 45% of the units that will stay below market for 10 years. So the only way we can break that right now is, again, if that building comes down in construction, there's some yield maintenance on the finance side. But again, I think that's a really, you know, that's 10 years. In fact, I don't know if there are anybody in this room right now, but I do know there have been tenants that have gotten a rent decrease because of that, which is pretty unheard of, right? So I don't think the new site, at this point, we haven't modeled it with any affordable. The affordable would stay at the Mariner.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you also for
Yeah, yeah.
providing the
Yeah, yeah.
affordable housing
Yeah.
to begin with. Yeah, much appreciated.
Councillor Swift.
Thank you. As I understand it, and you maybe know better, the sewer needs some upgrading. And I don't believe we're scheduled to do that until 2029.
8.
I'm correct. Yes.
I think it was 28. Is it
20
29? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm wondering what the timing would be for you.
As it relates to the sewer, right now, as I understand it, that connection is below the Mariner. So no matter what we do, it's going to have to be replaced and upgraded. And that would be all part of what we're trying to do anyway.
I guess I'm wondering about our part of it, the foreshore project.
Yeah, that's the 2029 capital projects that you're talking about. It's a DCC project. So typically how, if the developer goes in advance of the town having to do it, they would do the project and get DCC credits based on advancing that capital project to deal with their development.
But it's not our intention to wait until 2029 and let the town absorb that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, I think I just heard the answer to that, but to confirm, you would be absorbing that DCC and getting credits back later. You wouldn't be waiting for 2029. Okay, because one of the questions was with the master planning happening at the Providence site, it would be nice to have those things. So if you were waiting anyway, then that tie-in.
Yeah, and I don't have to tell you guys. You guys understand this. This is the balance and trade-off of infrastructure upgrades and growth and community nature, et cetera. I get it. This is still a balance that has to be had. But that infrastructure upgrade, I think, happens sooner with a project like ours than on the 2029 timeline. Oh yeah, sorry. Better? Sure.
Thank you. We will be getting to this in about 10 to 20 minutes on the agenda. So we will be discussing it shortly. Thank you for
Excellent.
the presentation and thank you for both coming.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Okay, so we are on page 6. We have adoption of the minutes for Wednesday, March 4th for adoption.
Second.
Any questions or comments on the March 4th minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. On page 12, we have the Strategic Planning Committee meeting minutes for March 11th for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on the Strategic Planning Committee meeting minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. From that meeting, we have committee recommendations on the urban forest management strategy. Number 1, that council direct administration to proceed with creating a tree protection bylaw that regulates trees on private property with details, size, restrictions, etc. to be determined.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on number 1? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Number 2, that the tree protection bylaw allow removal of most trees on private property with few restrictions, primarily requiring permits for tracking purposes.
Move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on that? All those in favor? Opposed? I'm just going to do that one more time. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, and that passes. Thank you. And number 3, that council direct administration to require a permit for removal of trees with a diameter greater than 30 centimeters.
Move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on number 3? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Number 4, that council direct administration to develop a criteria for defining significant or ecologically valuable trees that may require additional protection.
Move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on number 4? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. And lastly, number 5, that the tree protection bylaw include a tree replacement ratio requirement with specific ratios to be determined.
Move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on number 5? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. And we will be having the tree open house coming up on April 8th, 4:30 to 6:30 at Destair. We're now moving on to page 14 of the consent agenda. If I can get a motion for 1 to 4 to be received.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of receipt? That passes. Thank you. And individual items to be brought out of consent. Councillor Haslett.
Number 3, please.
Number 3, that's taken out. Thank you.
So I think a few of us received emails on this, but it's a really interesting idea about these waterfront saunas. It sounds like this pilot project that they've done in Vancouver is going really well for them, up to the point where they have, I believe, extended it for a year. I think it could be a really interesting pilot that we could try out. From what I understand, there are a couple of people in the community who offer somewhat of the same style of business. So I'm just interested to see. Obviously, I'd love to see someone from our community be able to put this together. I'm just wondering what the next steps would be as far as getting this going, picking location, and then getting something like this up to tender so that we can have kind of a multitude of businesses kind of come back.
Sure. So we have had some businesses approach us on our bylaw before on being able to do this on some private property. And I know this would be different. This would be potentially like a society or town property. Just a question over to Director Restworm. Would a staff report basically on how the bylaw reads now be very time consuming to have done, or would it be something where we could just have the bylaw brought to a future meeting and then once we have supportive CAO wall in person, we can potentially look at what the next best step would be?
Yes, we could certainly do that.
Is bring the bylaw to a future meeting. Councillor Haslett, I think it's important just because we've had people inquire about it further. This would go out if we move forward with it to the general public versus the one group that's come forward, and they would be welcome to participate should we decide to go down that road. Are you comfortable with the bylaw coming to a future
Yeah, I
meeting?
move that we have a bylaw come to a future meeting to look at what the possibility of tender looks like.
Sure. Okay, that's moved and seconded. Then we can get opinion from fire and all the different departments on this. All those in favor of the bylaw coming to a future council meeting? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much for that item. Are there any other items 1 through 4? Okay, so we're moving along. We have under new business, we've moved up official community plan amendment application 2181 Comox Ave, which is the community plan amendment application. And there is the option there for staff, or we'll look around the table to see what consideration there may be. I can start. Yeah, you can move one for, just use your mic, please. Thanks. Okay, so the official community plan amendment application for receipt has been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on receiving the application? For receipt, number 1. Councillor Mayer.
Yeah, it's just a process question. We're just receiving it rather than motioning it.
Moving receipt.
Well, the intention was to move receipt so we could discuss it.
I see.
Then we
Okay,
can decide what we do on number 2.
gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Are you comfortable with receipt being moved on that one before
Yes.
we vote on it?
Thank you.
Just checking. Okay. Have we received it? I don't think we have. Okay. All those in favor of receipt? And that is received. And number 2, that a public information meeting be held on this application prior to consideration of first reading of the bylaw.
I'll move for conversation.
Okay, that's moved.
Speaker votes.
It hasn't been
I'll
seconded.
second.
I was gonna say, well, so let's talk about it. Yeah.
Moved and seconded for consideration around the table. Councillor Grant, you have your mic on there.
Yeah, so, I saw this when we were doing our OCP, and this was sort of a topic of discussion back then. It seemed like an awfully lofty, dream, I guess, for me to look at that. I thought that when we were doing our official community plan based on what the province is telling us we have to do, that we kind of push the envelope to get to where we are. I think this is overkill, in my opinion, and it's higher than what I believe is what people are accepting of as of today. So I would be voting against this. And I don't think we even need to go to public hearing on it. I think it's just not what the public wants.
Councillor Hazlitt, and then I'll go back to you, Councillor Mayer.
I agree with Councillor Grant. In the presentation, there was a lot said about the Mariner building and the 30% below market rates. And I think that's absolutely incredible. And it would be fantastic to push this project forward so that we can maintain that. Again, the OCP being absolutely fresh and the work that it took to get to the state that it's in now. The feedback from the community was they don't want height. I really do understand from the developer that that's what makes this project feasible. And but at the same time, I just can't move forward on 9 stories. And I think that we've been accused in the past of, pushing things along through the process, and I just wouldn't want them to spend a bunch of money getting this to just get pushed along and stopped at a later date. So I would be voting against it.
Thanks, Councillor Mayer.
Thanks. I'm also not able to support the proposal, although I will say I really appreciate the creativity and the care and definitely appreciate the affordable units that we have. For me, we did just complete our extensive OCP process, and the site specifically was reduced to 6 stories after significant community input. So for me, the OCP needs to function as a stable and trusted guide. And I also just wanted to acknowledge the tenants of the Mariner, many who have written in, and they've spoken to the real uncertainty and stress about this proposal and just the future for them. So I just wanted to acknowledge that this is a really tough situation for them to be in. I hope that we can find a different creative way forward together.
Thanks, Councillor Mayer. Okay, I echo a lot of what Councillor Mayer said. I think that the last thing we want to see is 108 people displaced. And I recall when we were talking about 9 stories during the OCP, it was a very uncomfortable proposal. And I think people were quite surprised and shocked by it. But I think because it's rental housing, because of the location, because of the housing need, it was important to have that discussion and put it out there for the public to know that that was the discussion point. But coming out of the OCP, it doesn't feel like there's a right answer here, but going to the 9 or 10 stories just doesn't make sense after we just had this discussion in the last 2 months. So I would be voting against it going to public hearing with some challenge on what the pros to a project like this could be. Councillor Kerr.
I'll be brief. Just want to say that I want to thank everyone that had took the time to write in by email or letter to get involved with this and get engaged and let the council know what you thought. I was in favor of 4 stories across Comox and voted against 6 stories in the OCP. So it'll be unsurprising that I will be voting against 9+1 stories.
Okay, looking around the table, we will vote on this going to a public hearing. All those in, sorry. Do you want to comment, Councillor Swift? Councillor
Well,
Swift.
just in the spirit of having to speak up if you're going to vote in the negative fashion, I cannot support this either for all the reasons that we've already heard about. And I don't think there's any point in going to the public session because I don't think there's going to be any support in the public for this project. So I am not going to vote in having it go forward.
Thank you for the comment. And so we are on number 2, voting for 2181 to go to public hearing on the 9.5 or 10 stories. Director Russwurm.
I just wanted to clarify that the motion on the floor is that the issue go forward to a public information hearing, not a public hearing, public information meeting. Not a public
Thank you. Public information meeting. Thanks for clarifying that for the wording. And we'll go back to looking around the table. Councillor Blacklock.
This will not be, I don't think, the last time we have to deal with this height issue. When we look next door to the Providence Living site and you think about the kind of buildings that could go up on that site down the road, I think that this will come back to our table. One thing with the Mariner Apartments is we are now, by voting no against this 9-story building, we are pushing the Mariner closer to eviction. The tenants of the Mariner will now be faced with a much more tenuous situation as we go forward. So in spite of that, I am willing to support the OCP. We worked hard on it. We paid our consultants over $250,000. So I think it's worth supporting. We had community feedback on the 9 stories at not just this location, many other locations. So I'm happy to support the will of council and vote against this 9-story building. Thank you.
Okay, I believe everyone has had a chance to speak on that, so we will move for voting on it going to a public information meeting on 2181 Comox Ave. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is defeated to go to public information meeting. And I do want to thank Drew and Darren for coming this evening and preparing us with the presentation. That does conclude any information on 2181. So I'll just give a moment. Anyone is welcome to leave or stay, and we'll be on about a 1-minute break.
Just a process question. Do we need to vote on the alternative? No. Okay.
Well, I can check with staff on the break, but I think that's probably Welcome back to the regular council meeting for March 18th. We do have one quick last item on 2181 Comox Ave. Because we received the application, we do need now to, I'll move that we reject the proposal as it was at 2181 Comox Ave, the amendment as presented.
Second.
So moved and seconded. This is just for process. Since we received it, we now need to reject it, so it cannot be brought back as is for the next 6 months. All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. And just to share clarification, if a project that was a different amendment came back, it could come back before 6 months. So this just kills as it was for 6 months. Just going to get back to where we were in the agenda. So we are on unfinished business, 7A. The first item there at 1829 Beaufort Avenue has, they received their temporary use permit on that evening. So unless anyone has any questions or comments on that, that one has been issued for the Montessori School. Any questions or comments? Councillor Blacklock, just use the mic. Yeah.
Just a question to staff. We issued this temporary use permit, or we are going to issue this temporary use permit. One question I had is there any requirements that this private Montessori Academy will have to meet Ministry of Education standards with respect to square footage per student or outside play area or specified pickup and drop off areas? Because one thing I've heard since this, since our meeting on this issue was that I don't believe every tenant in this building or every occupant in this building was properly consulted on this. And I know that there may be some way for the Ministry of Education to weigh in on this before the school actually opens.
I'm not sure if we'll be able to, and I think CEO Wall had some of that information. I believe all occupants were actually notified. It just depended on which person in the organization, but it was confirmed that they were notified. But I will see what Director Houle has, and this may have to go on offline to CEO Wall. TUP was issued the day after we approved it, so it got issued quite quickly as far as that
Okay.
timeline. Director Houle.
Through the chair to Councillor Blacklock. I actually might seek some assistance from Director Russell just on if this would require a business license, if a school of this nature would require a business license, and if we would seek some sort of confirmation from the Ministry of Education that they've approved it before we issue a business license.
Yes, they would require a business license, and we could consult with the ministry for sure.
I'm not sure if you want to have any follow-up on that question or not.
I would
because it's
just
a code,
just ask that we do consult with the ministry before we issue that business license. Is that something that we can need to formalize as a mayor and council, or is that something that I can trust the town processes to take care of?
We'll take care of it.
Good. I think it would be hard to have a discussion on that on the fly, so we'll leave that up to the business licensing. Any further questions or comments on the Montessori School? Okay, next on unfinished business, we have the presentation on the funding request for the inclusive playground that came from the Ecole Rob Road PAC Playground Committee from last meeting. They were requesting $100,000 partnership with the town of Comox for the $164,000 they have raised. Is there any questions or comments on B? I'll go to Councillor Mayor. I will just prerequisite that we did mention before the presentation that we didn't have a sponsorship fund program for this, but they were welcome to come to hopefully be able to get it out to the broader community and potential donors, but that it would have to, you know, come from a special motion that we do not have funding in this regard set aside. Councillor Mayor.
I'm hoping that somebody can help me remember the conversation we had about this playground and its closeness to the playground at the community center, because I do remember we discussed the idea of having only one rather than having two, but I don't remember where we landed. So this may be a question for staff, or it may be that somebody else around the council table can remember. So like what I'm wondering is if there, I think we have another playground across the street on our projects list. So what I'm wondering is if what the implications would be of combining them as was discussed previously.
Pulling from somewhere. I am going to go to Director Hagmeyer if possible. And again, we can bring this offline if needed. So the question was where, or Director Ashfield, where this lies as the small, I think it's a tot playground at the rec center as part of the master plan. What is the plan for that playground in the scheme of things? And if needed for more time.
Thank you. I probably need more time. I don't know exactly, but I think there's always the intention to have the park, a park at the community center, just because of the needs. And it makes a lot of sense because they could have other children that are at gymnastics or doing other events. So having it in that close proximity into the community center area, I think that was always the intention to have it, but I don't have any details of what that park would look like, but it makes sense to have it at that location.
Okay, and there's not funding in the short term in the next 2 years or so for that playground, I don't believe.
I don't believe
it's not in the near future.
I don't believe so.
Okay. We can go offline with that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Haslett, was it about the playground? Councillor Haslett.
I have a hard time if we were, and it sounds like the idea is not to put money forward, which I'm for us not putting the money forward. I have reservations about putting money onto either into the other pack or into the school's pack, or have it go onto school district property, mainly because if we decide to go forward with it, we don't have any control over what's going to happen with that property or the project. If in 5 years they decide to come along and make drastic changes to Rob Road, because it really hasn't had too many changes in the 80 years it's been around, I would hate to see us dump a bunch of money into building a playground only to have it taken down a couple of years later. I also think that the primary role of the PAC is to go around and raise money for their schools, and there's multiple schools in Comox that have their own PACs that are raising money for their own things. So for us to give such a large sum of money to one individual PAC, I do have an issue with.
Okay, well, I was really impressed with the actual playground design and how much work has been done. And I was happy to see them come to council, but with our current shortfall, we just don't have the capacity to start the precedent with playgrounds. So a very challenging no to pass along, and we can potentially look at sharing what they're doing as they go along and trying to get fundraising, but we just don't have the dollars at this time. So thank you so much for them bringing advocacy forward that this is not being provided in the region, and it's something when we're talking to the school district we should be bringing forward to their attention. So thank you to Nikki and Catherine for that so much. We are out of the unfinished business, and we are now moving to the development cost charge update and bylaw adoptions. And we have Nancy here with us if we have any questions. I don't believe there's a presentation, but any questions we have Nancy and Director Houle for. So we have number 1, the amenity cost charges bylaw number 2052 be adopted. And we can move it for discussion, or if there's concerns, we can.
Second.
Okay, thank you. So moved and seconded for discussion. Again, this report's on page 20. Questions from council on ACC number 2052. Councillor Swift. We're on ACCs. Number 1.
I think I might be out of order. I have a question about units being purchased by the town, which I think's in the affordable housing piece.
Yeah, I think that's on number 3. If you want to hold for that part, I think we're going to go one by one here.
Okay. Oh.
If that works. So we're on amenity cost charge bylaw, which we have the chart sent out and in the report. Any questions on the amenity cost charges? Councillor Haslett.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions when it comes to the project list and kind of where we would look to start discussing some of these projects that are on here.
Sure. And is it there's the 2 different lists. So is it the amenity cost?
This is the ACC list.
Perfect. Yeah, now would be the time for questions, and I might ask.
So there's a couple of different things on here that I'd just like to get a little bit more clarification around. I've had a couple of these conversations offline, but I think it's good that we discuss them in council. I want to discuss the village field master plan as well. I know it's a 20-year plan. There's a couple on here, the fitness studio expansion and the building expansion. You know, they're not insignificant amounts of money, but I can absolutely understand the need for them. And then we've got the community center basketball courts. And I understand that there's a private group that's been working with some of the PACs to build basketball courts. And I wonder, do we need these? And then it goes down skills park, picnic tables, pathway lighting, and shade structures. The shade structures one specifically is down towards Marina Park, or at Marina Park. I mean, it's for $50,000. So, but I look out there and we've got 2 gazebos, 2 buildings, a splash pad. We've just planted a bunch of trees. I don't understand why we need a shade structure down there, and I don't think that that's a necessary project. I don't really know how we get $100,000 worth of pathway lighting at Lancaster Park. There are probably some really nice lights. And then there's a covered picnic table shelter as well there. And I know that Lancaster Park was set out to be a kind of a next community hub for parks for us. And we're looking at heavy expansion for that. We did multiple times. I think we were doing irrigation there, and we got multiple letters and questions from members of the community there that were pretty upset because they thought that we were going in and doing a bunch of work at the park. So I just want to know what a lot of that looks like. And in addition to that, sorry, jumping back to the pathway lighting, with all of those residents being of Lancaster Way, I think it is, what are those lights going to do to these people for nighttime and that? Are they going to be just pointing away from the properties? Like, how's that going to be? Anyway, there's a lot of stuff in here with the exception of the fitness studio expansion and the building north entrance expansion here that I don't see as things that we need.
Okay, so I'll look, we either can vote down the current motion if people are wanting some of those items removed, or you could potentially look at doing an amendment and we could look at it that way. Specific to your questions, we can pass them over to staff. But specifically, because again, if it's something you're wanting removed, then we would just motion that way potentially. But you have a question on what the lighting impact would be, and can you just summarize kind of your 1 or 2 other questions, and we'll pass it over to see what we can determine.
Essentially, it's everything outside of the fitness studio expansion and the building expansion. I'm not sure where the conversation is right now with the PACs. I know we've all heard that basketball courts are going in. I mean, that's 150,000 right there. We've got a Village Park Skills Trail that is potentially going in at the park across the street from the rec center, which is where all of the disc golfers play. So I don't know if those 2 sports coincide very well. I think what I'd like to see happen here is I don't know if we need to discuss these things one by one, but there's a good amount of money in here that I think they're just in there for the sake of having a project in there right now.
Okay, before I go to Councillor Grant, I'm just going to go back to Director Houle or potentially Director Ashfield. I'm not sure where that lies. Is there anything we can ask as far as like where the lighting at Lancaster Park kind of sits, if it's had design work done, or again, if it's kind of that placeholder, because of course we'll be collecting for many years before it actually goes in. So any background on that item, and Councillor Haslett can follow up if needed.
Yeah, great. Thank you. The projects listed here, most of them were identified from the Trails and Parks and Trails Master Plan. A lot of these are just high level and giving the town an opportunity to collect the monies, exactly like you said, Mayor, that we have to collect the monies first, and then this will come back to council and which ones that we would probably want to prioritize from these based on the community needs, the density that we're seeing. We might not collect any ACCs over a number of years that we can't pursue any of these projects, but these are just placeholders so that we can start collecting that revenue so that we can move forward on some of these projects. In regards to the details of the pathway lighting, we don't have that. It's not a design. Consultation will need to happen. Same with the Village Park Master Plan. Obviously, there'd be consultation with the neighborhood, probably open houses, public open houses to see what the community wants, but it's all based on the Parks and Trails Master Plan. That came out of that. Basketball courts, hoops, I think that, yeah, again, was another one that was identified. The picnic shelter at Lancaster Park, then those details will come out of the master plan as well when that happens. And then the Marina Park Shade, I want to say that it's actually in our 5-year plan this year, but it was something that was highly requested by the community in the Marina Park, because as you know how hot it gets with a lot of children out there. So that was definitely a need that we heard from the community, and also came out again from the Parks and Trails Master Plan. So I don't know if that helps.
It does a bit, but my biggest worry about this is that a lot of times this is how projects just start and then move forward. They end up on a list. Okay, we're just saving money for these. Then the next thing you know, we're shovel ready 8 months later. And I just don't, there's just projects on here I don't necessarily want to see that happen with. I understand that it's ACC, that these ACC projects are dependent on development, and you know, we all just sat here and kind of pushed away development. But again, yeah, my biggest thing is that sometimes you start seeing these projects come in and it starts as just a 20-year plan, and the next thing you know, 2 years down the road, we're getting ready to start building all these projects, and there's another list of wants right behind it. So it's really just a way for me to try and watch the money, I suppose.
I think CAO Wall had mentioned, like, if you really don't see it in a 25-year work plan, kind of knowing where it came from some of the community consultation, but you just don't see with the economic times it being viable for the longer future, then those are the items that we could consider discussing for takeout, but they're not things that will be happening imminently in the near future. But if you really don't see that changing with growth, then that's potentially something that could be looked at. Councillor Grant and then Councillor Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess with ACCs and DCCs as well, you have to remember that these are costs that we put on the development community when they're building a building, so that we can build these things as we get enough money. So my question is, like, I was looking at some of the bigger items on here rather than some of the small ones, because I don't think they have a big effect. But my question might be to Nancy is, like, if you took that $650,000 bike skills trail out, what effect would that have on our ACCs? Because I think what you usually find, especially with a lot of these smaller ones, is it's pennies on the dollar, right? Whereas, you know, if you get some of the bigger ones, then those actually have an impact.
I'm going to go to Nancy and just have you turn the mic on if that will go on. Yeah.
All right, through the chair, to answer your question, so yes, you're right. So if you look at ACC 004 to the remainder of the list, you'll notice, and I'm not sure if you actually have the background report. I'm probably looking at something that was attached to the previous report, but the benefit allocation is 25% to development. So if you added up all of those projects, you know, we're looking at, you know, let's just say significantly less than 300,000. So that would take $300,000 off the developer's responsibility, which would still, like, it would be probably like I don't know, like a 4% reduction. Like, it'd be to do is amend the bylaw at third reading. So then you could, it doesn't have to go to the ministry for approval. If you start cutting projects on the DCC, it has to go back to the ministry, just for clarity. But yes, so the top 4 projects on the list are at, the top 3 projects on the list are at 100% allocation to development. So there's the 1% assist factor. But if you remove those projects, but these were sort of seen as like this is probably the foundation of the ACC, these 3 projects, there'd be a more significant impact on reducing the rate.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is with the development going the way it is, prices are dropping, everybody's backing away from their developments, and here we are loading them up with more and more and more cost, and making it even more impossible for anything to happen. And so, you know, there's a fine line there where you've got to get it right. And so I'm not really sure, like, that's why I was looking at the Village Park Skills Trail. Not 100% sure what that is, but 650,000 seems like a fairly reasonable amount of money that if we could take that out, I'm not really sure what it is. So that's the problem I'm having.
Through the chair, and staff may want to add to this, but that is what's also referred to as like the bike skills park, which has come up, I think, around the council table on a couple of occasions. So that would represent that project.
And is so Village Park, because I've been told two different things on Village Park. It's the one beside the fire hall, right? Is that Village Park, or is Village Park the one beside the rec center?
Just going to let Director Ashfield pop in if I'm getting the right cue.
Thank you. Yeah, Village Park is on top of the geothermal field
Okay.
by the rec center.
All right.
And we're doing the assessment now, looking at the geothermal field in detail in regards to a business case, if it's the best energy efficient system that we need at the rec center. And so we're really doing a deep dive, and we should get the results on that in about 6 months. I believe it was discussed at one of the previous council meetings to really look at the cost that it's having on the rec center, the O&M, and then the real estate that it's taking up as well, and what we could do there. But that is the location that the pump track was the #1 location that was chosen, was to be at the Village Park and not the tot lot.
Okay.
But that'll all be based on the geothermal assessment once that gets done in about 6 months.
Right. So then I guess my next question, or my last question here would be, so if we took that out, because we're probably looking a few years before anything happens there, can we put these back in at a later date if we kind of go, oh, maybe we screwed up, we should put it back in? I realize we would be behind a few years in collecting, but is that a possibility to do?
Through the chair, with the ACC bylaw, it just basically needs to come back to council. You can amend the list, and it doesn't require ministry approval as part of this. When you are doing the ACC, I mean, you need to be doing considering the financial feasibility analysis, which, you know, that has been done, and you can kind of do a bit of an update or reflect on that. Council can always expand the list at a future time.
Okay, and I never did get an answer to the first question, which was what effect would that have on the ACCs if we took that project out in particular?
Director Houle has his
Is that
hand
a
up.
hard one to do?
Through the chair to Councillor Grant. So as Nancy pointed out, that's a $650,000 project, but it's only 25% benefit factor to growth. So it's at 162,000. So 162,000 of the 9.45 is about 1.7% reduction.
Follow some sense, please.
Not much.
1.7%
no, I
on
get
the
that.
overall cost of the ACCs.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So
Okay.
just off the top of my head, you'd be looking at maybe about $140 reduction with doing mental math, although I would suggest the CFO might want to do that math.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll jump back in. I just want to speak in total favor of that bike skills park. I think we've been looking at locations and testing grounds and talking about it. It was a top project the first 2 years of our council, and we kind of said we needed to keep looking for grant funding, which I know we continue to do. So I would really like that to stay in the plan with what that assist factor would be for the development community. It still is something that our youth has been following up and asking us, and we're hearing from PACs that that's still a top priority. So I would consider on the Lancaster lights and the Marina Park shading, even though I hear that that's something the community has asked for. I feel like there's alternatives where people could bring technically their own shade, or there's some alternatives where an actual bike skills park is pretty hard to replicate. So continued discussion on some of those smaller items, knowing how minute they may be to come out of the plan. I wouldn't want any of those large items personally to come out at this time. Councillor Mayor.
Yeah, those smaller items are at 25% assist factors, so they're very minor. And for me, when I look at page 22 and I look at our ACCs and our DCCs in comparison to Courtney and Cumberland, what I see is that we're very much in range. And when I look back at the lists that were sent out, I remember how much time and energy actually went into putting these lists together and how much we pulled apart each one of these items. I remember talking about all of the consultation that went into putting this list together. And because of the way that chart is on page 22 of this agenda, I am comfortable with all the projects that we have on our list. I do not think that the couple of $1,000 difference that we would make by removing these items would be in service to the community. And I don't think it would make a difference to whether or not a development gets built. So I'm comfortable moving forward with the current lists as is.
Thanks, Councillor Mayer. Looking around the table, we have ACCs on number 1 on the table for question or comment. So again, if there's any items that people were considering for removal, you would either vote against this or you could propose an amendment. We have Councillor Haslett.
Just to confirm for myself, it's just because they're on this ACC and DC or Chuck and ACC. So just if it's on this list, these aren't necessarily shovel ready projects. We're literally just starting to build a bank for them. So it's not gonna have to tax out the time.
Go over to before saying yes to that, but yes, it's the beginning of collecting.
I can just add to that, correct. And as well, the 5-year financial plan comes back to you guys every year, and these lists will get added on to those as we collect the funds or the need. Staff would recommend that to council for final approval in the financial plans as they come forward.
What happens either through to Director Ashfield or Nancy if we have the ACC's portion collected and it's decided that we don't have the town portion? Can they be moved between ACCs if a project isn't to go forward, or would it kind of be frozen in that? Like if a council of the day decides not to do something and 80% is still outstanding by taxpayer dollar in a 5-year financial plan, what happens with the collected ACC?
Madam Mayor, so basically you're collecting these fees. They're going into an ACC reserve fund. They're only for the projects on this list, but should a future council decide to amend this list or change it around or have different priorities, those funds would just be there for the new priorities.
So they're earmarked funds for a pool of projects that in theory are interchangeable.
In theory,
In
I mean,
with
you
some.
want to be pretty sure they need to have like a source. These are coming from a good source, like a Parks and Rec master plan, but like recreation trends change, master plans change, and that's why it's recommended in best practice to update these every 3 to 5 years. And also be doing inflationary adjustments annually so that you're keeping up to date, and it's opportunities to amend them. You know, who knew pickleball would be as big as it is 10 years ago, right? So like those changes can get reflected in the new bylaws.
Okay, community trends and such. Just a quick clarification, is that Lancaster Park lighting then, is the path currently from Lancaster Park all the way kind of like to Quality Foods where there's a trail, is that completely unlit currently?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay,
That
so
would
it's
be-
kind of the bigger trail system that is unlit right now.
correct.
Further questions or comments from council before we look at voting on adoption of amenity cost charges bylaw number 2052? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much for answering the questions on those. We'll go to number 2, the development cost charges bylaw number 2053 be adopted.
Could we have discussion on this before we make a motion on it?
I'll look to Shelley. I believe we would normally move a motion of some kind.
Can I make a motion to receive and then we can talk about it and then that's what I'll.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're making a
Motion to
motion to receive?
Second.
Okay, so this is 2053 has been received for discussion. Councillor Grant.
There you go. Yeah. So I'm just looking at this list, and what first caught my eye on this was the $7 million we had for park acquisition. But in talking to staff today, it seems that that included the Newsom properties. So that actual number is lowered to about 5 million. Am I correct with that? Went from about 8 to about 5, I think.
I'll, yeah, go through to staff because I thought that it was not. Nancy.
Through the chair. So that particular acquisition, like when we developed this, we knew that it was in play, but it was still pending. And the value of that purchase is also roughly the same as the Parks DCC reserve. So in the background reporter in the DCC list, you'll see the park acquisition at, I think it's 6 hectares. So it reflects that pending purchase, but so is the reserve. So now what's happened if that purchase has gone through, the reserve now goes to, I think, basically 0 or close to 0. And then the need is you've already kind of dealt with something on the list, but it doesn't change the DCC rates. So we've kind of it's sort of a wash, if you will.
Okay, so that begs me the question of what would we be buying in the next 25 years for $7 million plus another $1 million down the road here? There's another Parklands one at 25% benefit factor for $1 million. So that's $8 million we have in there. And I'm looking around our community and trying to figure out where we would even buy a park. Like we've purchased all of the big ones. We used to have a park acquisitions list, and all of the big ones are now been purchased. And so I'm not really sure what we would be looking at purchasing with this money.
Through the chair, just for one point of clarification, and staff may wish to add some addition to this, but from my recollection of developing the list, that amount, so that say 6.9 million would be reduced by the acquisition value, which I don't know if that's public information. It is, I think it was 3.9 or 3 point something.
3.84.
So that would cut that cost estimate in half because you've already accomplished one of the goals. So then the remainder park, I think there's been some lands identified where growth is expected to occur. But again, like that type of information in terms of like targeted properties and areas of interest would remain in camera. And that would also align at a much lower rate than your Parks and Rec master plan goals for community parks acquisition. So I think going back a few months, council provided staff some direction, and staff feel free to jump in, but like to actually reduce the per capita goal for park acquisition from the DCC. So this is actually a fairly low parks acquisition that's being attributed to DCCs compared to what's recommended in the Parks and Rec master plan. But maybe over to staff if there's any other thing that you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, I'll go over to Director Ashfield, but from memory, I think we cut out about 40 or 50% of what we looked at originally. Director Ashfield.
Yeah, that's right. Original number was 12 million, I believe, for community parks, and we reduced that down to 3 for one community park, and then we had to add into the nuisance park land because that wasn't purchased yet. So the intent of what came out of the Parks Trails Master Plan, where that community plan exactly will go, we're unsure, but it would be within the Anderton corridor as we build out further north. So we probably don't even have the land within the town boundaries, but as that expands, the need to have a community park in that area is where they anticipate that coming. We would probably need to move forward to a parkland acquisition strategy so we can focus in a little bit further where exactly those lands are, but somewhere in that area is the facility where we would see that community park. And then the 1 million we have for the neighborhood park would possibly be in Northeast Comox or along Forster area. That was an area that was identified as a need in the Parks and Trails Master Plan. And that area B area as that boundary expands into the town. So that's where that area, that location would be for the neighborhood park.
Okay, thank you. So again, the plan called for about 12 and we went back to 3.
All right.
But we're at 6.8 or something.
Correct. Once we included the nuisance property,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. That's confusion at a higher level, so that's good. Yeah. So the other thing that I was looking at when I was going through this is we have a plethora of washrooms on here for tons of parks. And I really question whether we need them all, to be honest with you. Like, Anderton Park, you're right beside the mall. There's a washroom right there. There's the golf courses right there, you know, and then the one that sticks out as one we might need is Royal Purple Park, which I believe is the one down at Kai Bay. That makes a bit of sense. But the rest of them, I'm really wondering, like, they're 150 grand a piece. And by the time you add them all up, it just makes me wonder whether we need all of those. I mean, they do become problematic for you in the evenings with people hanging around and the trouble. I mean, you just have to look to Courtney and their one they put downtown to see the trouble that they get into. And I just, like, there's a lot of money. There's over $1 million worth of washrooms on this plan. And so I'd like to have a discussion with everybody as to what they think about those washrooms and whether we need them or not.
Okay, so other comments in general on DCCs, or Ken's put it out, sorry, Councillor Grant's put it out as far as the washroom discussions. I believe we have Councillor Mayer and then Councillor Grant, or sorry, Councillor Mayer and then Councillor Haslett.
Yeah, just on the washroom front, I would say as somebody who has been pregnant twice and somebody who has cared for small children and who cares for aging parents, I really see the need for washrooms, particularly as our community grows and we have more people in those spaces. Like it's really the difference between people being able to stay in a space for a set period of time or kind of choosing not to go out. So I see that as really important community amenity.
Okay, Councillor Haslett.
Yeah, they recognize there's a ton of washrooms on here, and that's you know, I do understand the need for some of those. Absolutely, I do get quite weary about it. We've had we've had some vandalism on some of our washrooms, you know, over the past while, and you know, fires started in that, and I get worried when they start getting them close to forested areas and things like that. So I understand, but I do recognize the need for them in certain areas. I mean, we do have a couple down at Point Homes. I think they're porta potties, but I mean, they're kind of doing their purpose. A few of the things on here that are popping out to me though are there's a playground at Point Homes and a playground expansion at Royal Purple Park. Touching on the Point Homes one first, you're at the beach. Go to the beach. I don't see the need to build a ton of stuff right there when you're at, like, go play with rocks and sticks or whatever. Royal Purple Park, I think we just did a playground expansion. I'm not sure how old it would be, but it's probably 15 years old, 10 years old, less. So I just don't quite see the need for an expansion on this. And I understand there's a lifetime expectancy to these, and ones that are, you know, situated next to the ocean that probably deteriorate a little bit quicker. But I look up to Old Village Park and the disc golf area there, and they've got, you know, some really old equipment in there, but it's just loved, like absolutely loved. So I don't see the need to go pull something like that out when you already have playgrounds in place. Again, I understand these are things that we're just raising money for, but to try and raise $750,000 for a playground at the beach, I'm not in favor of that. And then the other one on here, and I'm on a list, the DCC project list, and it's P002, and it's a park trail or trail development, new trails to be developed to service growth. And it's about $320,000. And what I'm wondering is, are those trails through the woods and the forests, or are they connecting trails between cul-de-sacs and streets that allow bike access and stroller access and things like that? Maybe that's through the staff, that one.
That's PO2. I might go over to Director Ashfield if possible on that.
I don't recall, but I believe it's probably a mixture of both.
I don't know, it came to my mind, it could be potentially the trails that are in some of the new parks that we're purchasing too, like.
Yeah, it could be through woods, or it could be multi-use paths through alongside the road dedication, parkland. I'm not sure if Nancy has a detailed list from her records, but yeah, I think it's just a combination of different various trail networks that were identified through the Parks and Trails Master Plan. I believe there was 3 or 4, and then we just combined them all into one lump sum, but I don't have that detailed
Breakdown.
list of what they are.
There's no problem. And then for the sake of process on this, if we're moving these lists along, like when's the time to discuss about pulling projects off? Like I don't want to have to do undue work for staff to send it over to the ministry. But at the same time, there's things on here that I don't think are required that we should probably pull off, like a $750,000 playground.
We're at receipt right now, so if we've had a reasonable dialogue, we can vote on receipt, and then we would move into adoption, and you could make a motion of a new projects list, but we may want to ask what the process of that being sent back to the province looks like, so people can make that vote. But I think we would do it after we vote on receipt. We would have a new motion either as is, or someone can suggest removals at that time, and we'll have a quick discussion on what that would look like to send back to the province.
Yeah, through the chair, I mean, really, you want to try to get that list where you want it before you give it 3 readings and then send it to the ministry. So it will require, a ministry re-review. The reduction in projects is like not likely to raise the concern of the ministries. It was your bylaw went through the ministry without question, which is actually quite unique in these days. But yeah, in terms of the process, we would basically take the cuts, recalculate the rates. We would have to do like the background reports and all of the information with the ministry's submission. So there is budget impacts associated with that. And then it would go back to the ministry. You'd give it 3 readings as amended. So we'd probably just take the direction from council to recalculate, bring the bylaws amended back to council for consideration. And then based on that, we would go to the ministry. They'll do their review. Hopefully it could be expedited based on the fact that they've done the core of the review, and then would come back to council for adoption.
Thanks for that clarification. And that's whether we make changes now or in future. Like the process will be the same now as it would be for some reason there was a review done in a year or 2 years. That process remains the same. Director Houle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also wanted to point out that if council were to remove around $1 million, looking at the category of benefit to new development, so after you take the benefit factor, that's about an 8% reduction. And on the medium density charge, that's about $1,000. So the medium density charge is around $12,000 per unit. So if you were to remove about $1 million worth of projects, that would be about $1,000 reduction. So going from 12,000 to 11,000 for that medium density charge, just to put that into context per unit.
Can you remind us what the medium density category is? Is that 5+?
Medium density is it's townhouse development. I don't know if it's more than 2 units. It could be a 3-plex or a 4-plex or more.
Yeah, through the chair, it's basically anything over the single. So the single is a low density with an ADU and a suite. As soon as you do a duplex, you'd have 2 medium density charges. And then that would be basically ground orientated type development. If you had a 40-unit townhouse, there'd be 40 medium density charges. As soon as you go to an apartment building with an interior access corridor, that's high density.
Okay. So again, $1 million off that DCC list is about $1,000 a door. Okay, it's helpful to put into context. Councillor Grant.
Yeah, so the other one on here is we have the Village Park inclusive playground, and we had a brief discussion on that. But they're building another one at the school, not even a block away, and so I'm wondering if there's a need for that or not. I see we've got one down at I believe it's Marina Park for the same type of thing. I assume it's the same type of thing. It's $1 million. So I'm just wondering if there's any uptake on putting an inclusive playground right next to where another one's going to go. That would reduce things by about another $1,000. So,
Okay, I'm just going to look for. Councillor Mayor, do you have a question? At some point, I think we'll receive the report and then move into potential. But I want to make sure everyone who had their hand up
It's okay. My question was, I wanted to know what the, like, how this translated. And again, you know, going back to that page 22 and seeing, you know, $1,000 less on some of these, again, for me, just doesn't seem like it's worth the effort that it will take staff to repackage this all up and send it back to the province.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote for receipt just to kind of keep things moving along. We still have opportunity for discussion on this. So all those in favor of receipt of the DCC's report? Perfect. And now I will look around if there is anyone who is prepared to make a motion on adoption for development cost charges number 2053 or an alternative. Councillor Kerr.
I'll move number 2, that bylaw number 2053 be adopted.
Okay, that's moved and seconded. So for discussion now, and I'll just quickly look to Director Westrom. If there was items that councillors did want to potentially look to have removed and go back to the province, we could do that as an amendment, or it would have to be defeated. That's the better process.
You would have to defeat the motion to adopt the bylaw.
Perfect. So just for clarification, if there's, that is moved and on the floor, and we will have a little further discussion. If you're going to be voting against, you may want to put something forward. Otherwise, we will look to go forward with voting on adoption. And you will vote against if you want items removed. Councillor Swift.
Thank you. I just have a question for Nancy. I know I'm looking on page 44. And the comparison between the low density residential at 23,000 and change and the medium density at 11,000. Is that reasonable and equitable to have the single family house basically over twice as much? Particularly if we're going to townhouses where you're probably going to have the same number of people living in them, or you might.
Through the chair, I mean, in terms of developing these definitions, they were done at a regional level with all of the CAOs to try to have consistency between the regional bylaws and the municipal DCC bylaws for ease of calculation. So at that time, the low density definition includes the detached unit, an ADU, like a carriage house, and a suite. So suites are exempt in all situations. And that would be for $23,000 for Town of Comox DCCs. If someone was to build a duplex, they would pay 2 times 11,000. So they'd be paying, you know, 22,000 roughly for the duplex. But if you kind of look at the duplex would have 2, but the single, the low density, you can have the suite and a carriage house included in that as well. And that, you know, you basically are looking at, and how you come up with these rates is like you're looking at population growth, you're attributing where that population growth is going to go, whether it's low density, medium density, or high density. You're looking at the equivalency factors of like how many people are expected to be on the lot based on like census data and their impact on infrastructure, and you basically put that all into the model. And that's how it comes out. It was elected at that regional meeting that the medium density would be charged on a per unit basis, and the apartment would be at a per square meter basis. So when you're using that medium density rate, you're taking the average townhouse size in the community. So if you're building a larger townhouse unit, you'd have arguably a lesser DCC per square foot, but it was just an average, which is a very common way to go. Is like a per unit charge. It's simple to calculate, and also municipalities tend to also want to encourage like larger townhouse units for families and stuff like that. So there's a bit of a, I guess, incentive there, but that's not really the intent of the bylaw. So, you know, it's an equitable and consistent way of essentially distributing the cost of infrastructure, you know, that's legislated by the province, and there's a best practice guide on like how you calculate these things. So this, you know, this bylaw fits that model and fits those best practices. So it's deemed to be more equitable and consistent and clear than many other options that you could be looking at.
Thanks, Nancy. And it's the same with the DCCs as far as if something doesn't go forward, it can be pooled to one of the other DCC items if in our 5-year or 20-year plan, we decide not to move forward with something. This is much more of a forward thinking. This is what our future needs could be. Much broader approach.
Madam Mayor, you're correct. And I mean, the whole concept in like best practices, and obviously the town's got a little behind in updating your DCC bylaw, and that's the shock to the development community that you're experiencing as politicians that we really need to avoid in the future, you know, to make sure we're doing annual inflationary updates, and that you're also reviewing these every sort of 3 to 5 years to reflect construction cost changes and also reflecting new master plans. So for example, the town is completing a sewer master plan right now. It's a good chance it's going to identify additional projects that need to get added onto the list. On purpose, the sewer DCC has a 10-year time horizon because you don't have that master plan in place. Once that master plan is put in place, those projects, you know, might get added to. Maybe it's determined one isn't needed or the community is growing differently. So that's why you need to review them. But yeah, projects come and go. The only thing that you can't do is remove a project from the list that's not 100% paid for. So you might have something that's complete and you're going, why is that still on the list? It's on the list because maybe there's borrowing or there wasn't enough DCCs you had to borrow. It stays on the list. But if you don't need it anymore, it can come off the list and a new one can come on.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Mayer.
This is a question for staff and most likely Nancy. So I can see that we're very close with Cumberland and with Courtenay, which is reassuring from a regional perspective. I'm just wondering if you can comment on how we compare with other communities. And I apologize if that's in the report somewhere and I've just become fixated on this page, but how do we compare? Because I would think we wouldn't want to be too far off. I think the worry is that we're becoming artificially inflated and become undesirable to build, right? So but if we're all doing it, then it's all the same.
Through the chair, I mean, every council wants to see comparisons. And I always caution them, like they're good to see. I see why you want to see them, but each municipality's infrastructure needs are different than other communities' infrastructure needs. And so like your infrastructure needs are your infrastructure needs. If you need that sewage treatment plant, you need that sewage treatment plant. And in that community that didn't plan for that or didn't anticipate it, their DCC is going to be high. So is it fair to compare? You know, for maybe a municipality it's growing as fast. So, you know, there's that. And then there's also when you're comparing, sometimes there's different definitions. So some municipalities might not include an ADU in their low density rate. So like that being aside, there's some apples to orange comparisons. Looking at how you stack up, I'd say you're kind of in the middle when you look at it from a provincial scale. I mean, the Metro Vancouver area, the DCCs are way higher. The ability to absorb them from a financial feasibility standpoint is different. The lot value, the land values are different, right? When you're looking around the island, there's a lot of updates going on right now. You know, you're very, very low before, as was your neighbors. They were low because they weren't updating their DCC bylaws frequently. Campbell River is currently going through one. They're going to come out. They don't have the regional DCCs. So, you know, their core municipal DCC is probably not going to be that different than yours, but they don't have the regional one to add on. A little bit south of you, they're behind on their DCC bylaws, and Nanaimo is considering a DCC bylaw right now, as along with many in the Victoria area. So like you're not far off. I can name all kinds of municipalities that are higher. And in the Okanagan, maybe a little different comparison, roughly around the same rates. Like Peachland is looking at one, Summerland, they're not quite at readings yet, but yeah, and they're grappling with the impact on development as well. But the infrastructure needs are there, and if you can't develop, because you don't have the infrastructure, there's nothing that's going to develop or deter development more than that. So that's like one consideration that's really important. I think the other thing is making sure that your projects are up to date is really important as well, because the development community doesn't often talk about this part of it. But if there's a DCC project on the list and they need it for their development and they build it, they can get DCC Works credits associated for that. If it's not on the list and they need that infrastructure, they need to build it and pay DCCs. So having a list that's up to date and reflecting actual costs is good for those developers who need DCC projects. The other thing is when they build a DCC project, they can only get DCC credits for what it's listed at in your bylaw. So if they have to go and build it at 160% increase of construction costs than your old DCC bylaw, they don't get credited for that real construction cost. So there's benefits to those developers that are needing these projects to move forward. But of course, there's many that are having to pay increased DCCs that don't see that work credit or direct benefit, but they're things that should be kept into consideration.
Thank you. That was super helpful.
Yeah, thanks. That was some new information on the budgeting side for the developers on getting credits. So that was good to hear. Questions from around the table? Councillor Haslett.
Just a couple, or I guess question and a statement. I mean, the majority of the stuff on this DCC list is must-haves. Like, I absolutely understand that. We're not, we need capacity increases across the town. We need to connect water mains. We need to tie water mains in. That all makes sense to me. We've got a project in here. It's P017. It's a playground in North Comox. What are we considering North Comox? Is it as far up as the base, or is it Highland Pritchard area, bottom or top of Foxwood? What's North Comox for this?
Not sure if Director Houle may have an answer, or Director Ashfield.
Yeah, I'm
North Comox.
anticipating that's the northeast Comox area location where we're going to get the acquisition for the land. This will be the playground that would most likely go into that play area park.
Okay. And I can understand the need to have a lot of these projects on the list. It helps developers. I'm wondering if we could, I wonder if we could make an amendment to the motion to remove the $750,000 Point Homes playground from the list.
Just through direction of staff there, we just vote against the motion. If you would like something changed, that's going to be the easiest way versus doing an amendment. So if you're not for the list as presented, you would vote against the DCC list. Is there any further questions or comments on development cost charges bylaw number 2053? And I believe it's been moved and seconded. It has been. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is defeated, and we will look for a motion from council.
That we move the same DCC project list while removing the P018 Point Homes Playground project.
Second.
Okay, so that list, and if there's other items, I would also say to tack them on, but that's been moved and seconded for the Point Homes Playground P018 to be removed from the DCC list, and it would go then back to the province for approval of the bylaw. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, Councillor Mayer.
I wish I could remember the conversation, but I just remember that this came onto the list in the first place through extensive community consultation. And I remember that we talked about it at the time and decided to move ahead anyway. So I'm going to vote against.
Okay, thanks for the comments. And any further? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? And that passes. So through to staff, it is development cost charges number 2053. But it's not for adoption, correct? It's for just clarification. Would it be adoption with that change? No, it's not adoption because we're sending it back. Can I get a reminder of which reading we would be on that then? Do we need to repeal?
Through the chair, so what we're gonna have to do is amend the rates table attached to the bylaw and bring it back for, as amended, and then send it to the ministry.
Okay.
I'm not sure if, Ms. Thrustworm would be, in terms of like doing the math, and amending Schedule A. If council provided the direction to amend Schedule A to reflect the change and send it back to the bylaw and do third as amended, but I don't have that right off the top of my head. So I think we probably have to do the amendment, come back to council, do third as amended, and then go back to the province.
I agree. Without the rates, we can't amend the bylaw.
So it sounds like basically the motion for adoption has been defeated and it's back to staff to be able to bring Schedule A as amended forward.
Correct. So
Okay.
the decision direction from council is to ask staff to amend the bylaw and bring it back for third reading.
Perfect. We'll have the written motion that just passed reflect that. And just checking, we can still move on to the affordable housing amenity contribution as it stands on its own leg as a third portion. Or is it affected by Part 2 DCC?
And Mayor, just a point of consideration for council and the adoption of that bylaw is there are administrative complications. If that bylaw is adopted tonight, it becomes into effect tomorrow. And then you'll have that kind of taking place tomorrow and the in-stream protection associated with it. And then the DCC coming into effect at a later date, which is possible to do. It's just something to consider.
Okay, I'll just look to Director Houle for number 3 on the affordable housing amenity contribution. Would it make sense to defer that until we have more clarification on the ACCs? DCCs, my apologies, wrong word.
Your worship, I think it could go now. It was sort of tied into the costs associated with having to pay a new ACC charge. So I think it could move forward now. It was more tied to the ACC, not the DCC.
Not the DCC. Okay, so just to get it on the table for discussion and we can see where it lands, I'll put on the table that Council Policy CCL 069.04 amendment be approved.
Move that. Second.
I had already moved it. We'll take a seconder from Councillor Grant. Thank you. And for discussion, Councillor Haslett.
Just confirm, it sounds like this policy is staying in place for the next year due to that's how long it's going to take for the ACC and the DCC bylaws to come into place. So we're just making sure that there's not a gap in the bylaws. Is that correct?
Through to Director Houle.
Through the chair to Councillor Haslett, that is correct, but I would ask Nancy to explain the in-stream protection for amenity cost charges is actually a little bit different than development cost charges. So if I could just ask Nancy to explain it, but as I mentioned, it's really tied to the ACCs, this keeping this policy in place. So Nancy could explain a little bit more about in-stream protection for ACCs.
Yeah, I think my question was, and I had a discussion with CA Wall about this, is the reason this policy is staying in place right now is we're waiting for the ACC bylaw specifically to be adopted, and it just kind of is make sure that we're still collecting as we should until that policy is in place. Is that correct?
Through the chair. So the legislation allows for in-stream protection, which is always like a good thing to have in the back of the mind. So if you have an application in play that's complete, with the town, or even like a subdivision application for a subdivision, if people come in and get their building permit within a year, they pay the old DCC rate, not the new DCC rate. And then the same goes with ACCs. In the province's wisdom, with the legislation and ACCs being a new tool, the ACC bylaw is anything that's in stream is basically has in-stream protection. They don't have to pay the ACC indefinitely. Then when the town updates the ACC bylaws, we recommend as best practice to do that annually with an inflationary update. Then the 1-year protection kicks in. So basically, if you're doing your annual updates correctly, the existing applications and precursor applications that are on file and complete will have ACC protection for 2 years. From the date of the adoption of their first bylaw, and then the date of the adoption of the second bylaw, they have 1 year. And then there's a whole bunch of complications around that I won't bore you with, but they would pay the pre-inflationary adjustment rate for a year. And then you do another inflationary adjustment. Yeah, it just goes on and on. It's administratively very complicated and unfortunate. And then especially to have 2 different scenarios between ACCs and DCCs, there's a chance that legislation, I'm hoping, will get amended so that they're consistent. But at this time, there's some nuance to the ACCs. So what I think the intention, and Mr. Hull can correct me, but is recognizing there's this in-stream protection, is that when you have in-stream protection, you would still pay the CAC rate. Because so that you're not getting out of both of them, because the whole intention was to delete that requirement because of the financial feasibility associated with having both.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go to Councillor Mayer.
Sorry, can you remind me, we're no longer able to collect funds towards affordable housing, is that correct?
Through the chair, the province is coming out with potentially a new tool, and like what you can't be doing is double dipping. So if you had a density bonusing program in place, which you don't, but if you did for affordable housing, then you can't be collecting for the same things twice. Yeah.
Thank you. Just looking around, it looks like there is no further discussion on number 3. Thank you for the answers to those questions on number 3. So for approval, amendment to be approved, Council Policy CCL 069.04, Affordable Housing Amenity Contribution. All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Nancy, from Urban Systems, for coming tonight to answer our questions there. And we're moving along. We have no special reports. We have bylaw adoptions for fees and bylaw notice updates. I'll just quickly read each of these off individually and we'll go through them. Number 1, that the sanitary sewer bylaw number 2057 be adopted.
Move.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on number 1? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Number 2, that the storm drain connection amendment bylaw number 892.06 be adopted.
Move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's adopted. Number 3, that the water rates and regulation amendment bylaw number 529.35 be adopted.
Move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions and comments on the water rates? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Number 4, that the street and traffic amendment bylaw number 1358.07 be adopted.
Move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on number 4? All those in favor? Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Number 5, that the fees and charges bylaw number 2058 be adopted.
Move. Second.
Moved and seconded on number 5. Any questions or comments on 5? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Number 6, that the bylaw notice enforcement amendment bylaw number 2004.04 be adopted.
Move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on number 6? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. And lastly, we have that the miscellaneous bylaws amendment bylaw number 2059 be adopted.
Move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on number 7? All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Thank you very much. So under new business, we've already gotten through number 1. So we're on the page 154, the Post-Employment Benefit Working Fund and Tax Stabilization Reserve. And this policy is looking to fill a funding gap through collecting a portion of the net, not net revenue, but net income from years in the report provided there. So I'll move 1 just for discussion, that council approve council policy CCL-088 year-end surplus allocation policy.
Move second.
Moved and seconded.
You moved it.
I did. Tripping up here. Okay, so questions from council on the policy that's been provided there. I have a question just as far as the review on this, because it looked like with a 25% of last year's tax rate or 2025 tax rate, we would have enough in the reserve like at year 2 to year 3. So is this something in the short term we'll be using to catch up, and then we would reevaluate in 1 to 2 years, or the council at the time will reevaluate this policy in 1 to 2 years as far as that percentage collected?
Yes, hopefully. It just depends on the first part of the funding the unfunded liabilities. And then after that, yeah, it's, as a policy, can be reviewed by council anytime.
Yeah, because that need could also grow at the same time, but okay. So it's a short catch up in the next couple of years. Any questions or comments on that? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes. And number 2, that Comox Reserve Funds Amendment Bylaw number 2025.02 be given first, second, and third reading.
Move.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on first, second, and third reading? All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Under notices of motion, I just want to move that council meeting video recording policy number CCL-060 be amended to specify that both regular meetings of council and strategic planning committee meetings be live streamed and saved to video archives. I'll move that. Moved and seconded. So just to speak to it, we've talked about during some of our strategic council meetings that there's really important information being shared, often through staff in presentations. And we've had members of the public reach out and say they weren't able to retrieve the information after or be able to watch those meetings from home. So I recognize there's kind of pros and cons of having those meetings where we dig in and kind of have a different formality. But I think the pros of the transparency and having people get the same information that we have outweighs the cons of having that information not available. So it's just been in our council policy that we don't. So we haven't been able to live stream some of the ones we would have liked to. So for discussion, I think we should go forward with that. Councillor Haslett.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm in favor of this. I think that it goes a long way for the transparency for the table. We do get into some pretty fulsome conversations at those meetings, and when the information then gets brought to a regular council meeting, it can move forward without too much discussion after the fact, and the public can be left a little bit wondering. So I'm in favor of this. I think any conversations that we have around the table, with the exception of things that need to be in camera, should be out there for the public to see.
But just a point of order, this is a notice of motion, so it's going to come back at the next meeting, so we shouldn't really be discussing our thoughts on it at this point.
You're right. My apologies. I was thinking it was a motion on the floor tonight, but it is a notice of motion. I'll go to Director Russfirm.
Just to mention, council could unanimously approve to add this to tonight's agenda and discuss and approve it.
That's helpful to know. Knowing our next meeting is a regular council meeting, I'm completely fine. And I did speak out of error in speaking about it. I think that's not in the notice of motion. So being that April 1st is a regular council meeting, we won't miss anything by leaving it until then, if that makes sense. So just in case anyone has more questions on it, we'll leave it for April 1st. Councillor Blacklock. We won't speak about it.
Could I ask, Mayor, that you share with us the correspondence you received on this specific issue so that we're all looped in on who is requesting this from the public?
Sure, I can request some of the positive towards this, but some of it's also, yeah. I'll share what I can share that has no privacy implications. So that's just a notice of motion, so we'll move along from that. On the correspondence, We have the letter from Comox BIA that's in front of you and also was emailed out yesterday. This is for receipt, and this is on the MRDT, which is going to be coming to us on Wednesday, April 1st from the CVRD. And basically, we'll be looking again to send a letter of support at this time to the CVRD to be managing the MRDT where it lives now. Comox is not currently a participant with the Port Augusta, but looking into the future, there is the opportunity that future hotels would look to join. So we have some consideration around this coming to us April 1st, with the likelihood of delegations from both organizations that are speaking to us about MRDT. Again, it currently lives with 4VI and the CVRD. So just for, I'll move receipt of this letter. I wanted to make sure people had time to ask questions to staff or to either of the organizations. I'll move receipt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments before this kind of follows up at our next regular council meeting? Councillor Swift.
Well, I guess I'm not really clear on this because I don't believe we have anybody that contributes to the MRDT. And I believe in the presentation from the destination group, they were going to have the monies collected, at least the 2%, spent on destination and experience and promoting tourism. And then the OAP, and I forget what the acronym stood for, but it's the online. Okay, so Airbnbs and all of that, they're going to be taxed. And it was my understanding that that was the money that was going to come back to the community to be determined how it was spent.
Yeah, I think in the presentations I've seen from them, the OAP has been designated for the affordable housing portion. But again, I think most of our questions probably will have to go straight to the delegations.
Okay, I guess I'm just not sure how this all fits together. So anyway,
I think it's in there. They have, if I'm looking at the terms of reference sent over, and I won't speak for them. So, but in the terms of reference sent over by the Comox BIA versus the terms of reference with the CVRD, there is some differences as far as what opt-in and opt-out would look like. But again, I think once they're both with us, we can kind of try to work through some of those things, because I think it's really good to apply to future hotel, are the future hoteliers of do we want it local versus regional? Do people get voted in still at 51% or not? But I believe there's some very light differences between the two, and they live in the terms of reference. So it would affect future hotels. But Councillor Grant.
Yeah, this gets really quite technical, and I could try and explain it to you, but honestly, it's really hard to do. And I think that if you have questions like this, they would be far better answered by the groups that are coming. They will actually know the answers properly. MRDT and tourism are kind of different things in a way, so it gets very complicated. And so that's why I think it would be best if we put this off and wait for them to come and ask them the questions.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Councillor Mayer.
It's just a process question. We're putting this on the next agenda, but we're receiving the delegations at the same time. And generally, we don't make a decision on the night of delegations, but the timing now that we're kind of putting it so the decision will happen on the same night.
I'd have to check the timeline, because we don't have a meeting on April 8th. I believe there is a cutoff. So when there is a time sensitive item, we have moved items before, but if
there was a time sensitivity.
Yeah, it's one of the
for the
questions.
first time tonight. Okay. So be prepared to make a decision at the.
I'll have to check with CAO Wall, but there was some time sensitivity. I don't know if it can stretch to the April 15th, but I believe that's also a strategic council meeting. So we still wouldn't be technically making motions of that. So.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
But potentially we are looking at there could be a decision point on April 1st. So I can't answer that with certainty yet. Okay, so for receipt, and again, you could reach out to the organizations in advance, but this will be coming to our regular council meeting on Wednesday, April 1st. All those in favor of receipt? And that is received unanimously. Thank you. There are no late items other than that. So reports from council will just report anything that was learned through some of the boards, but not necessarily just things that were attended, but new information for council. Councillor Blacklock.
Just a reminder from our friends at the Community Justice Center that the event is coming up on April 9th featuring author Michelle Good. Tickets are available. That will be at the Sid Williams Theater. Last week I attended the Local Government Learning Academy in Richmond, attended some excellent sessions on storytelling and cementing your legacy in the 4th year of your political term. And I also we had a very good presentation from the Squamish Lillooet Regional District around their reconciliation table. I would say that they're probably the gold standard for reconciliation efforts at the regional or local government level. And I learned a lot from that presentation. Other than that, I have nothing further.
Councillor Swift and then Councillor Hassett, please.
Thank you. I just simply have a reminder of the Easter event coming up at the Philberg on April 4th, 10 to 2. Bring your family and have some fun.
The Stair Center AGM today, there was a vote for the incoming president. Myrna Holman stayed on as president, and they have got a really strong board moving forward next year. Strategic plan was laid out and presented to the members of the center today, and it was well received.
Thank you. We'll go Councillor Kerr, Councillor Grant, Councillor Mayer.
Thanks. I was joined by Councillor Mayer today at the Comox Estuary Flood Project. It was a kind of a celebration of the work done so far to kind of look at adaptation strategies for potential floods along the road, but also affecting the farmlands and Comox First Nation residents as well. Really interesting session today. So thanks for them for inviting us. Interestingly, at the CVRD board yesterday, we spent a lot of time on 2 transportation topics. A couple of just interesting tidbits to share. I'll give you the highlights. The Moto Car ride sharing program co-op is interested in coming to the Valley, potentially getting a fleet of ride sharing cars. So people could downsize from, let's say, 2 to 1 car or 1 to 0. They are looking for a large company or municipality or regional district, for example, to kind of take that on and maybe have some employee or downsize their own fleet. So that's something maybe we could talk about at a future time. And then Evolve, the e-bike and e-scooter update. I thank them, I hope you don't mind, on behalf of the town for allowing us to ride their scooters in the parade and nautical days. Just some interesting stats. There are 30 stations now across the Comox Valley. 50 e-bikes and 75 e-scooters are in circulation. They're almost at the 10,000 trip mark, and the average trip is about 3 kilometers or 13 minutes. There's 126 monthly subscribers. They've expanded into Cumberland. There was a 160% increase in trips from last year to this year. And 21% of riders actually use Evolve to connect with BC Transit, which is interesting. So stay tuned. This summer, there's going to be an e-scooter safety tour. And maybe we should take that before the next Nautical Days Parade. Thanks.
You forgot the part where they banned Councillor Haslett from ever using him again because of his bad behavior the last time. Anyway, no, so other things that went on, the homeless support services, there was quite a list of things that we're looking for money as they come and due, totaling about 255,000, and that was deferred. And I think most of the problem that they're having is that the province has cut back all the funding for a lot of them. So they're just really struggling to figure out how they're gonna make it work. So that happened. And the other thing we did, just a minor item, but we adopted the budget yesterday, and so the tax increase for the town of Comox will be $18.41 per house, as opposed to Courtenay at 51 and Cumberland at 68. So overall, it comes to a 7.6% increase at the RD. There you go.
Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. Yeah, I just really want to thank the group who put together the kind of I don't know what to call it. It was almost like a ceremony, but it was specifically not a closing on the flood strategy. And I think what was so remarkable about it was it started off as a really typical, very linear planning process to do a flood strategy focused on Dyke Road there. And as they worked through it, it became much more collaborative, much more in partnership with Comox First Nation. And it has evolved into a much longer term kind of relationship and partnership that I think will see many benefits, side benefits for many years to come. And it was just a really also a very beautiful ceremony. So thanks to all the folks who were involved in that work.
Thank you. And thanks for attending those. CEO Wall and I had our bi-monthly meeting with Comox First Nation, just discussing some of our shared interests and shared projects around the community. Mostly of note, we were talking about what's happening down at Mackling Park, as we're starting to see some movement down there, and just what the future signage opportunities will look like once the new platform is there. So they were excited to see some of those new drawings, and then also had some questions just about what was taking place, because there's lots of movement with the Newson Park being announced and Mackling. There's the temporary road and closures, and so we spoke a lot about that and some of the other later projects, like the park naming of DL 194, which is a park we lease back from them and will have a naming in the next couple years. The totem pole by Carver Everson going out at the roundabout, which should be coming out this fall for completion, and just general economic development. They just hired a new economic development officer that started 2 or 3 months ago. I believe his name is Mark, but I can't think of his last name at the moment. But it was an overall good check-in with what's happening with them and treaty, and lots going on with Comox First Nation. So it was nice to be down there for that bi-monthly visit. Island Coastal Economic Trust, which is, of course, the trust that supports Upper Vancouver Island, not including Victoria, is basically getting to the point where they're down to about $2 million of funding. So if they don't receive provincial revitalization in 2027, they're starting to do a business plan for basically dissolution. So there's lots of advocacy happening from different mayors and MLAs to try to get that funding revitalized. They're looking for $150 million to be able to recapitalize permanently, but that's a little bit up in the air at the moment. So the Island Coastal Economic Trust meets every 2 months, and the provincial government has said they're drafting legislation to potentially look at funding, but it's very unknown what that will look like. So there's still projects going through that, and Comox has been awarded many projects over the years, but it is a little bit up in the air whether enough funding will be given or not. So we'll just keep people in the loop on that. Councillor Blacklock and I had an informal meeting with Comox BIA just after some of the tourism items, and they brought up this need to discuss MRDT, which is where the letter in terms of reference, not where it came from, but we did meet with them just to kind of keep relations positive and see what that board was discussing. They did mention that their summer market's changing, so it's going from that one summer days into a Friday market, and I think we'll see more information to come. So there's some changes on what our summer market looks like. It'll be more of an ongoing weekly event. And we celebrated with them, I guess it was 2 weeks ago or a week ago, down at the dock. Now the marina dock is open to the public during the daytime hours. They're posted right on the 2 doors, and you can kind of walk along about 5 minutes of the wharf, but that is now open to the public for anyone who wants to wander down there, and potentially we have some economic development opportunities with them because of that. Lastly, there's been some ministerial staff meetings that myself and the other mayors in the region and Chair Cole Hamilton and Councillor Kerr have been involved in getting. Those conversations are ongoing, but it's basically, as Councillor Grant alluded to, there's a real lack of funding for some of the unhoused services in the region, and we're really trying to get ahead of it and show them without Braidwood breaking ground when it was supposed to. There's a real gap in services between now and when that happens. So we've got a minister meeting booked next week, and we're really hopeful that we'll be able to find some funding for from the province for that. So we'll just keep keep you in the loop on what is happening there. And with that, do we have any, there's no media questions. We'll go public questions. I'll just get you to use the mic, Bob. Thank you. Thanks for sticking around.
Hi, folks. Thanks for your, I just wanted to say, I was disappointed today about rejecting that Comox Avenue one. I thought that was, I was surprised how many people, those that you were, I thought would be for it, were against it immediately. I can see the Cedar one being rejected at the get-go, and I get the OCP finishing line and that sort of stuff. But I thought this thing had some merit, a lot of merit, actually. And I wonder if the number 9 kicked it for most people, if it was really number 9, because we're also worried about skyscrapers along the main drag and all that sort of stuff. So couple things. So as a taxpayer, and we're talking about our tax increases and whatnot, and the government's now changed the deferral plan. So a lot of people like me are going to have to start paying more automatically right now. So I'm not sure how many people here or on your letter writers are in that boat as well. And I'd like to quote from the staff report tonight, reiterate, I'm sure you guys read it. I'm not sure how many people the letters writers read it, or these folks here. But if I may, I'd like to reiterate what the staff report said.
And I will just, if there's a question at the end, that would be great, just because it's questions.
I'm just commenting. I don't know if there's a question. If I can't comment, then I don't have a question. I guess why is the question.
You did ask that
close
question.
Enough?
You can continue the comment, but I'll just, yeah, it is question.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not emotional yet, so I'm getting better.
Either are we.
So you folks just spent, I don't know how long talking about ACCs and DCCs. And in the report, I'll start here. So the development cost charges calculated at the current bylaws for 1830 for 109 units apartment construction, $4,000 per unit, or $436,000. The development cost charges under the current DCC would be $1,125,000 plus $410,000 ACC charges. As development is unlikely to proceed due to the sewer, the development will be subject to the increased DCCs and ACCs, and therefore not the affordable housing contribution proposed. In addition to other fees, such as servicing connections and building permits, will be collected at time of building permit issuance, as well as significant capital improvements on Manor Drive along the subject property's frontage. The proposed development, if approved, would generate approximately $85,000 in unallocated taxes. So going back to the number, so while 10 stories is significantly above the permitted elsewhere in town, the characteristics of the subject property support consideration of increased heights. There are no immediate adjacent low-density neighborhoods within the closest RSMU zone lot located approximately 50 meters from the proposed building. The building's prominence will also be mitigated by its placement behind the existing 4-story apartment building and the upward slope from south to north. In addition, there's a gradual grade increase from the subject property towards Comox Avenue, which further reduces visibility. The proposal is consistent with the OCP objectives and policies that multifamily development is an appropriate method for maximizing the residential use of land and increasing housing choices on large properties located in central Comox and close to downtown. The proximity of the subject property to the downtown and nearby services, parks, bike lanes, bus routes encourages more walking, active forms of transportation to access daily needs. The proposed development would add 109 units of housing stock to the central location, helping to meet Comox housing needs and targets. A mixture.
Bob, I'm going to just stop you
Okay.
there if that's okay, because I'm not sure how long it is, but I can assure you we have read the report. But I would say the question is around the 9 or 10 stories. So I would have a conversation with whoever on council you kind of want to have around that. For me, it is that 9.5, 10 from the 6 that we deviated from. So we can talk offline kind of about that.
Yeah.
But it is question
I mean,
period.
that
so
guy
I'll
didn't
stick to
sound
policy.
like that big bad developer, right? He seemed like pretty earnest fella.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I didn't feel like a good, easy decision to be making tonight for sure. Thank you. Thanks for the question comment. Okay, so with that, I will look to call for adjournment at 7:23. All those in favor of adjournment? And thank you very much. Thank you to our audience. Thank you to senior staff, and feel free to have